Welcome to a new video in my home automation series, and this is going to be a follow-up video to one of my recent review, which was about the NetIO PowerDIN 4PZ. And this unit, what you can see here on the image as well, it's a sort of like the multi-purpose input and output unit. So just to recap, it has two mains output that are metered. So you can see, let me just show you. So you can see the power consumption, of course, voltage, power factor, frequency on these two outputs. So these are the ones here. And we also have two free contact outputs. So where you have access to the relays. So of course you can connect a mains load, or you can use it as a dry contact as well. And what we also have here, which is unique to this model as opposed to some of the other NetIO products, it also has two inputs. So I have two input switches here that can be used as a switch, but they can also be used as a counter. So as you can see, they count the number of on-off cycles. So I think this is ideal to be used as some sort of metering device. Gas meters, water meters, they usually come with a Hall effect sensor nowadays. So you get an impulse for a set amount of water or gas used. But the reason I'm making this video, because there is a new firmware out, which is 3.0.0, and as you can see, I've done the upgrade, so I'm running on the new firmware, and this has created some additional features that I mentioned or I talked about when I talked about the MQTT protocol. That's what I'm going to talk about now. But before I go to that, I just also want to mention that there is a new feature available here. It's schedules, so you can create schedules. So it comes with a default always that schedule where the output is always on, but you can create your own schedules. Let's say this is the test schedule, and I want the output or one of the outputs to be on and this time, and on Tuesday on this time, and Wednesday maybe like that. Thursday could be full day, and then Friday maybe in the evenings, and Saturday, Sunday like this. So it's very easy user interface to set these schedules. You create that schedule. Now I have an always and a test schedule. And when you go to the output configuration, you can set that output to use one of the schedules. So the output will be automatically turned on and turned off based on this schedule. I think it's a great feature. And with this user interface, it is much easier to configure it and much intuitive than what we usually see with other devices where you set specific dates and day of the week, and so I think this is much easier, and the fact that you can create multiple schedules, you can just reuse the same schedule for multiple outputs, again makes the maintenance of these much easy. So this is one great feature. But then the other one is about the MQTT Flex. So if you remember, I talked about these output status JSON that I have used before, and this output JSON is going to give you a JSON payload in an MQTT topic, which is going to contain everything about the device. What are the status of the four outputs, what are the power meter characteristics of the two outputs that are metering, what is the voltage, the power usage, the power factor, everything. You can see an example here. But that did not include the inputs. And now with version 3.0, they have introduced two more payload options. One is the input status, which is very similar to the output status, but it only contains the input. And there is one as well which combines the two together, which is the in-out status. So I think that's great because I can get one single message and that's going to contain everything about my device. And I think in Node-RED, at least it's a little bit easier to handle, because I would rather have one MQTT in Node and then, try to slice that data rather than having a lot of MQTT in nodes. So in my previous video, I've created several in nodes for the input state and the input counter values. So you can see input 1 and input 2, S0 and S0 values, and the input state. But now everything comes in a single JSON. So I'm getting in this, by standard, it's called a device bound topic. And I think I have debugging turned on. No, I don't. So I'm going to turn it on. And now I can trigger this message either with the input or by changing the output. So I think I'm going to trigger it by changing the input. And actually we are getting quite a few messages. I'm going to explain why when I go into the configuration, but you can see this device bound is a JSON. So it contains the global measure, and this is just like before. So we have voltage, power measurement, frequency, total energy used, and that's for the entire device. So both of the outputs. And then you can see the 4 outputs together. So this is output 1, and that's the metered output. So you can see all the power characteristics and the power measurement values. And then the next one is output 2, and that is metered as well. So that has all the values as well. And then 3 and 4 is not metered. So we are just having state and ID and the delay settings. But now there is a new object, which is the inputs. So we are getting the 2 input 1 and input 2. You are getting the state of it, and that was when I pressed the button on input 2, and you also have the counter value, S0 counter. So anything that you need about this device comes in one single message, which actually I prefer. So I think this is a really good one. And just to recap how it looks like on the configuration side, I'm just going to go into the MQTT Flex. And to be honest, I made very little changes to the MQTT Flex configuration up until now, because if you see the publish section, so we have the first publish option, which is publishing when these events happen. So either one of the output changes state, either output 1, 2, 3, or 4, or let's say when the current changes on the either output 1 or 2. So if the current changes by 200 milliamps, and it also sends an output when the input state changes or the S value changes. And this is why we were getting 3 messages, because I pressed the button, that was the first message, and I released the button, that was a second message, and the third message was received because, of course, when I released the button, the counter value changed as well, and probably there is a little bit of delay or something, so a third message was also sent out. So here in the configuration, you can decide if you want to delete some of these. So for example, if you are only interested in counter values, you can delete this section here about the input state change. And if you don't care about the counters, then you can just delete the S0 input source changes and then just rely on the state changes. Yeah, and the only other thing I've done is here in the payload. Previously I had the output status, so that was the option that we had with the older version, and now I replaced it with the in-out status. So this is why I'm getting the full JSON with the input and the output data. So that was it. This is all I had to change, and I have still left in the rest of the configuration. So you can see that I still have a topic configured for input 1 and input 2 counter values, and also for the input 1 and the input 2 states. So I'm still getting that in a separate topic as well. So this part of the flow is still working, but again, you can decide to remove these if the single in-out status message is sufficient for you. At least you are getting less traffic on your MQTT one. And nothing has changed on the subscribe side, because obviously with the REST JSON, when you are controlling the output, while you are controlling the output, there is nothing that you can do on the input anyway, so that hasn't changed. So this was just a quick update. I just wanted to let you know that this device became even a little bit more capable and a little bit easier to use and manage via Node-RED. So I think this is all great news. So that will be all for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.